Alright, so today we are going to be checking out the WPL C74-1, which is also referred to the Suzuki Jimmy, and this one is developed by WPL. It's probably one of their nicer trucks and the newest one as well. So yeah, in this video we're just going to be discussing, going to the details, so you can decide if this is actually something that is going to be worth it for your money. So starting with the specs, the WPL C74-1 Jimmy is going to be licensed by Suzuki, so which is pretty nice, as we are finally seeing something that is kind of like much more scale, much more detail coming from WPL. One thing that you should know is that this car is advertised as a 10 scale truck, but however, in reality, the actual kind of like size and length is kind of more towards to the 12 scale. And I think this has contributed to, like, you know, Japanese cars kind of like, the real thing is generally kind of smaller than American made. So in this case, I think there's kind of using the advantage of saying that it's kind of bigger, but if you are actually looking for something that is actually going to be 10 scale, then this is not going to be it. This is a 12 scale truck, 100%. Talking about the exterior, as this is kind of like a licensed truck, you can see that you're going to get a lot more scale details, and it's more like towards the real thing. And I really like what WPL was actually doing for this particular one. You can see that they're actually using those kind of like softer feeling of matte paint instead of just like letting it using like the original plastic color. And this does make the looks, it does looks really nice. And I think even though you don't want to drive this, if you just want like a really scale model, yeah, this is definitely going to be it. I do appreciate that WPL is kind of finally listened to the community. We want something cheap, but also at the same time, we also want it to be as kind of like real as possible. Another thing I really like about this one is that you now get openable doors, and it's kind of like magnet hold right here. If you just close it, it's going to just shut itself, and really nice detail, I would say. Kind of like there's a lot of spring latch over here. You can just open it, kind of go back. And also one of the additional thing is that you will be able to kind of like flip this windshield like open, kind of like just open it like this. Talking about the things that doesn't open, is one thing that's a little bit disappointing is the trunk, because it does feel like this is going to be something that you can open, and it would be really nice if you can actually open it and put the battery right here. But in fact, this is just a complete set piece. You won't be able to touch the trunk, the hood at all. For the interior, I would say this time it was actually a pretty scale model. You can see that the drive wheel, since this is a Japanese car, it's going to be on the right side. And you're going to get all the stuff, that shifting gears, you're getting actually gear knobs, you're getting pedals as well, which is something that I just think this is a really nice touch. And if you actually look closely, you can also see that in the dashboard, you're actually going to be getting those kind of speed meters, which is perfect. Yeah, probably one of the nicer interior that I've saw in a while, at least we're on the cheaper truck side. So for the tires, you're going to be getting the standard WPL slip-on tires. I believe these are just complete slip-ons. I don't know if there's actually foam in there. Let's see, remove it. No, there's no foam at all, so you're gonna have to source your own foam if you're going to use this. Softness wise, these are okay, not the best ones that we have, but they should get the job done. If you're just going to be running on trails, not doing heavy rock crawlings, this is going to be okay. Next, let's talk about the more important portion. You are going to be getting two metal chassis, so which is going to add a lot of durability to the truck, but this is going to be pretty standard around other manufacturers, so not surprising to see it here. As for the powertrain system, the motor is going to be a brushed 370 motor, so finally WPL is starting to put a little bit bigger motor on top of their cars, so this should give us a little bit more extra juice when you are just actually driving. As for the gearbox, this is going to be the standard WPL gearbox, not going to be something that is very impressive, but at least they're kind of like reversing the steering right here, the steering link, so you don't get a lot of like tilting to one side. But yeah, overall the driving experience is something that we will be finding out later to see how this actually performs. So as for the electronics, the ones we're going to be getting is going to be the 2-in-1 WPL RX plus ESC kind of thing. So yep, you know, if you wanted to upgrade to your personal RX, you will have to replace the whole thing, ESC and also the RX. So something that is very good that at least WPL is doing in this particular one is that they're actually giving you metal dog bones in the axles, because the previous one are just going to be all in plastic, which is just not going to be very durable. As for the axle this time, I'm really happy to see that WPL is actually giving us metal kind of dog bones and kind of metal parts in here. I don't know if this gear is actually metal, so but overall I think it's going to be fine either way, because yeah, this is not going to be a very powerful car. As for the shocks, what we're going to be getting, it's just going to be the standard kind of spring shocks. However, one of the good thing is that this one you are able to kind of turn it to adjust this, so it's kind of like the only good thing about this shocks. But Yeah, because of it being like regular spring shocks, you're just gonna get kind of those kind of bubblehead effects. It's just gonna be bouncing around when you're actually driving. But if you wanted to really improve that, you could potentially just replace these two oil filter shocks. It should give you a kind of more stable kind of like feel when you're driving. Yeah, that's gonna be kind of like standard upgrade. If you're having a spring shock, just upgrade to like oil filter shocks. Should generally give you some kind of better performance. But because if you don't want this, that's gonna be the first step you should be thinking. Alright, so next we will be looking at the remote. This is going to be a pretty standard WPL remote that you probably see before. Yep, you get full proportional steering, full proportional throttle. And on the top, there's not going to be a lot of stuff. You just have one button that you will be able to adjust how much steering you want, which you should probably keep it at low because the high one, as we're going to be demoing later, it's just going to be hitting something. So, yep. This is that, and you will be able to adjust if you want brakes or not. You have a trim that you will allow you to adjust like the center of your tires, and that's about it. Pretty simple remote. I do like the grip. This is kind of small, easy to drive with one hand. Alright, so next, testing the slow speed modulation. You can see that this is probably the slowest it can go. It's not going to be very impressive. Let's do it again. Very, very slow. Okay. So, yep. Can we give it a little bit more? That's going to be slowest this truck can drive. Next, it's going to be the steering. So you can see that the steering of the WPL C74 isn't really impressive, even though it has a axle mounted servo, but you can see that it still kind of nods its head a lot. So this is not something that's going to be very impressive for certain people because this is going to impact your performance. Also, something about the steering is that if you decide to use the maximum steering, it's going to be hitting the shocks. So yeah, something that you can't do, you probably have to upgrade. However, one good thing is that at least they kind of fixed the dog bone issue, that the dog bone won't be able to kind of like properly engage compared to the previous versions. This one is much better. So yep, this is something that I think WPO should really work on is their steering. If you are going to have a steering issue that's going to hitting something, then you should probably not give people the option to kind of steer that kind of angle. Alright, so this is going to be showing you how the flex is going to be for the WPO truck. So the flex, at least, is pretty good compared to the previous versions. However, one thing to also note is that this truck is going to be giving you a lot of squeaky noise, which does kind of disturbs the driving experience a little bit because, yeah, squeaky noise just makes me feel that this is something that has been sitting in the garage for probably 20 years, and a new truck shouldn't be giving this kind of noise. Next, we will be bringing the C74 outdoor for some real-world tests. So the goal here is we just wanted to see how good the crossover capability is. You can see that crossing over wood chips is no problem, and even like longer grass, this is also going to have not a big issue as well. So kind of like driving this in the park, consider this is also like a 12 scale vehicle. It's probably going to be your best kind of use case. If you wanted to take this for trolling, I would say that it's going to be a little bit much for it because, yeah, the performance is just really okay. Next, we are going to test the top speed, and you can see that this is going to be the fastest speed on kind of regular paved road. Yeah, it's not very fast. I would say that this is probably just regular walking speed, a little bit faster, and it's just kind of like the motor is always struggling, very, very loud. So I would say that this truck, it's probably not going to be the best truck if you wanted to take it on a hike. Your motor is probably going to burn, because if you're going to walk like regular speed and your motor is always going to be operating like kind of like the fastest, I don't know, this is probably just going to kill it like on the first hike. Next, we're going to be testing the C74 against the road course, and probably the most important test, because you know, when you have a lot of suspension system, you wanted to see how good the articulation is going to be. And I would say that probably the articulation is probably the most satisfying thing to see on the C74, although it has a regular spring shocks, not oil filter shocks, but the overall experience of this is actually not bad. You can see that when you're crossing through stuffs, the shocks actually moves. It's not like it's bouncy, but you know, the whole car moves, but you can actually see the articulation of the tires going up and down, and it's very satisfying to see. And when we're also driving on sand, like on a faster kind of pace, you can see that the tire just going up and down, up and down, up and down. It kind of just makes you feel like a little bit more realistic, and yeah, satisfying to see the articulation. And this is also kind of why I love crawlers, because this is very satisfying to look at. With all this being said, what is my final thoughts about the WPL C74-1? So I would say that this is going to be a relatively budget, really nice looking scale little truck that you can put on the shelf for like kind of view purpose. But if you are actually going to be driving it, so I would say the overall experience is lacking the excitement, because when you're driving, it just feels kind of dull. It just feels like you're always kind of missing something that you will wanted to upgrade. You wanted to throw parts on top of it to make it perform well. But you know, if you wanted to achieve the kind of level of performance, you probably have to dump a lot of money on top of it. Probably go in something like an MJX H12Y or something, you know, upfront. It's probably going to save you the most money and the most satisfaction. This one is just not a very exciting truck to kind of drive with. Alright, so that's just basically my thoughts about the WPL C74. So if you have a different thought about the WPL C74, why don't you just leave a comment down below. Tell us like why you're choosing the WPL C74. With that, you can also help other people to deciding if this is the truck they should buy or not. Alright, so that's going to be about it for this short video. If you find value in my contents, please help me like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Happy driving.